The twin boys ran through the gates of Hart Mansion and stopped in fear when they saw the gateman asleep at his post. "Mom, please don't wake him like that," one of them begged as Vanessa Hart marched toward the gate in anger. "He's not lazy," the other whispered. "He looks sick." But their mother was already furious, ready to humiliate the man in front of everyone. What none of them knew was that the sleeping gateman was not just a worker. He was their real father. In one of the wealthiest parts of the city stood Hart Mansion, the grand white estate people never stopped talking about. Its tall gates gleamed in the sun. Its windows shone like mirrors. Luxury cars rested in the wide driveway like silent trophies. From the outside, it looked like the kind of place where nothing ever went wrong. But inside that beautiful house, silence lived like a shadow. At the center of that silence was Vanessa Hart, the woman who owned it all. Vanessa was a rich and powerful businesswoman, admired across the city for her beauty, sharp mind, and commanding presence. Ever since the death of her husband, she had ruled both her company and her home with strict control. People respected her. Some even feared her. She spoke with calm authority, walked with queen-like confidence, and expected everything around her to be in order. And usually it was. That afternoon, Vanessa's 12-year-old twin sons, Jalen and Jordan, arrived home from school. The boys looked almost identical, with neat uniforms, polished shoes, and school bags slung over their shoulders. They were smart, respectful, and careful with their words. Anyone who saw them would think they had a perfect life. In some ways, they did. But as they walked through the gate, neither boy rushed toward the front door. Neither boy called out excitedly for their mother. That was not the kind of house Hart Mansion was. Instead, both boys smiled when they saw the man by the gate. That man was Elijah, the mansion's gateman. He was a quiet, humble man to his late 40s who had worked at Hart Mansion for years. He wore a simple uniform and carried himself with calm patience. Most people in the house barely noticed him, but Jalen and Jordan always did. "You're back," Elijah said warmly. "We are," Jordan replied, already smiling. Elijah looked at Jalen and lifted a brow. "And where is the sweater you were supposed to carry this morning?" Jalen stopped walking. "I forgot it." Elijah gave him a gentle look. "I know. That is why I kept it in the security post for you before the rain starts." Jordan laughed. "You always remember everything." Elijah's face softened. "Some things are worth remembering." The twins relaxed at once. Around Elijah, their shoulders loosened. Their voices became lighter. Jalen started talking about a class presentation. Jordan asked if the rain would be heavy later. For a few brief minutes, the coldness of the mansion stayed outside the gate. Then a sleek black car rolled into the driveway. Out stepped Bianca Vale, Vanessa's cousin. Bianca was elegant, stylish, and always perfectly dressed, but there was something sharp in her smile. She greeted Vanessa sweetly the moment she entered the house, praising the beauty of the mansion. Yet only seconds later, she lowered her voice and criticized the workers for moving too slowly. "Sentiment makes people weak," Bianca said quietly. "You know that better than anyone." That evening, during dinner, Vanessa sat at the long, polished table with her sons and announced the event that would soon place the whole house under pressure. "The Hart Legacy Gala will hold here next week," she said. "Board members, investors, and important guests will attend. I expect this house to reflect excellence." "Yes, Mother," the twins answered together. Later that night, Jordan stood near his bedroom window and looked toward the gate. He saw Elijah outside, watching the mansion in the darkness. Then he heard him say softly, almost like a secret meant for no one else, "They've grown so much." Jordan frowned. Why had the gateman said it like that? The following morning, Jordan still could not shake the words he had heard the night before. They've grown so much, it had not sounded like something a Gateman would say. It had sounded personal, deeply personal. But before he could think too much about it, the busy rhythm of Hart Mansion had already begun. Servants moved quietly through the halls. The driver waited outside. Somewhere downstairs, Vanessa Hart was already on her first business call of the day, speaking in the cool, controlled voice that made board members sit up straight. In that house, morning never began with softness. It began with order. Jalen and Jordan came downstairs in their school uniforms, neat as always. As they stepped outside, they found Elijah waiting by the gate with the same calm presence he always carried. "Elijah, have you seen my math folder?" Jordan asked. Elijah did not even hesitate. "You left it on the small table in the reading room, under the blue magazine you were pretending to read." Jalen let out a laugh. "You even know when he's pretending?" Elijah's eyes warmed. "I know many things." Jordan ran back inside and returned with the folder in seconds. He stared at Elijah with open curiosity. "How do you always know these things?" Jalen asked, shaking his head. "It's like you've known us forever." For one brief second, Elijah's face changed. It was so quick that either boy could have imagined it. Then he smiled and opened the gate wider. "Go on," he said gently. "You don't want to be late." The boys exchanged a look, but said nothing more. Not far from the kitchen entrance stood Mama Agnes, the mansion's longtime cook. She was an older woman with a strong presence, soft eyes, and the quiet authority of someone who had seen more than she ever said. She had worked in the household longer than many people could remember. As she passed the gate with a basket of groceries, she noticed Elijah pull something from his pocket. It was an old photograph. The paper looked worn and faded, as if it had been touched too many times. Elijah stared at it for only a second before slipping it quickly back into his pocket, but Mama Agnes had seen enough to stiffen. "Elijah," she said quietly. He looked up at once. "Mama Agnes." She lowered her voice. "Old fire still burns, doesn't it?" Elijah's expression turned guarded. "Some things do not die." Before she could answer, the sound of heels cut through the front steps. Bianca Vale had arrived again. She entered the courtyard with expensive sunglasses, sharp perfume, and that polished smile that never reached her eyes. This time she went straight to Vanessa, who had just ended her call near the front terrace. "The gala must be flawless," Bianca said. "Every corner, every face, every worker." Vanessa folded her arms. "It will be." Bianca's eyes slid briefly toward the staff. "Then do not allow weakness around you. Rich people notice everything, especially weakness." Elijah lowered his gaze and returned to opening the side gate, but Jordan noticed something. Elijah's hand was not steady. A light rain began in the afternoon when the school car returned. The twins jumped out under the covered entrance, but Elijah hurried from the gate anyway, carrying an umbrella toward them. "Careful," he said. "The ground is slippery." Before he reached them, his steps slowed. Jalen saw it first. "Elijah?" Elijah stopped for 1 second, pressing a hand lightly against the gatepost as if the world had tilted. Then he straightened almost immediately. "I'm fine," he said, but he did not look fine. That evening, after homework, Jordan wandered downstairs to return a book. As he passed the open security post near the gate, his eyes landed on Elijah's wrist. There was an old bracelet there, simple, faded, almost hidden beneath his sleeve. But carved into the inside were 2 letters, J. Joe, Jus, and stored. At that exact moment, Mama Agnes stepped into the passage and saw it too. Her face changed at once. She looked at Elijah, and when she spoke, her voice was low and heavy. "One day, truth stops waiting. Elijah said nothing. Much later that night, when the mansion had gone quiet and the lights were low, the gate area fell still. A weak breeze moved through the trees. From the upstairs landing, Jordan happened to glance down toward the front entrance again. He saw Elijah leaning against the wall near his post, looking faint. Then, in a voice so soft it almost disappeared into the night, Elijah whispered, "I promised I would stay near my boys." Jordan froze. His heart began to pound. Had Elijah just called them his boys? The next afternoon, the words Jordan had heard the night before still would not leave him. I promised I would stay near my boys. He had wanted to ask Elijah what he meant. He had wanted to tell Jalen everything the moment they reached school. But the day had passed in a blur of lessons, whispers, and growing unease, and by the time the twins returned home, something else had already gone terribly wrong. As soon as the car rolled through the Hart Mansion gate, Jalen frowned. "Elijah isn't standing up," he said. Jordan looked quickly toward the security post. Elijah was there, but he was not the same as usual. The quiet gateman who always stood alert by the entrance was now slumped in his chair, his head resting awkwardly against the wall. His face looked pale, his eyes were closed. One hand hung weakly by his side. The boys hurried out of the car. "Elijah," Jordan called. No answer. Jalen stepped closer. "Elijah, can you hear us?" This time Elijah moved slightly, but only barely. He looked exhausted, as if even opening his eyes would take too much strength. Jordan turned to his brother at once. "We have to tell Mom." The twins ran inside together. Their polished shoes tapped quickly across the shining floor as they crossed the wide entrance hall. Inside Vanessa's private sitting room, the air already felt tense. Vanessa Hart stood near the window with a phone in one hand and anger in her face. Her voice was low but cold, the kind of cold that made people nearby speak carefully. Across from her sat Bianca Vale, elegant and composed, watching with narrowed eyes as if she enjoyed every storm she did not have to clean up. Vanessa ended the call sharply. "Unbelievable." "Mother," Jalen said quickly, "it's Elijah." Vanessa turned. "What about him?" "He's outside," Jordan said. "He looks really sick." "He was sleeping at the gate," Jalen added, "but not like normal. He looks weak." Bianca lifted one perfect brow. "Sleeping while on duty?" Jordan shook his head. "No, that's not what we mean." But Vanessa's expression had already hardened. "At this time," Bianca said softly, rising from her chair, "with the gala 1 week away, that is not exhaustion, that is negligence." "Please listen," Jalen said. Vanessa did not. She strode past them in her heels, each step sharp against the marble floor. Bianca followed with quiet interest. The twins hurried after them, their hearts pounding. By the time they reached the gate, 2 gardeners had paused their work. The driver stood nearby. A delivery man waited with boxes by the entrance. All of them turned as Vanessa approached. "Elijah!" Vanessa's voice cut through the courtyard. Elijah woke suddenly and tried to stand. He nearly lost his balance before catching himself against the post. "I'm sorry, madam," he said weakly. Vanessa's face was like stone. "Sorry? You sleep at the gate of my home in broad daylight, in front of visitors, and all you have is sorry." "Mother, please," Jordan said, stepping forward. "He doesn't look well." Vanessa ignored him. "I have tolerated enough carelessness," she said. "This house runs on discipline, not excuses." Elijah lowered his head. "Madam, I was not trying to fail in my duty." Bianca folded her arms. "Intentions do not matter when standards collapse." Jalen's voice rose with panic. "He needs help, not shouting." For a brief second, silence fell. Then Vanessa looked at Elijah with cold finality. "You are dismissed," she said. "Leave this estate today." Jordan gasped. "Mom!" But it was done. Elijah stood still, as if the words had struck deeper than anyone there could see. Then, with shaking hands, he bent to pick up his small worn bag from beside the security chair. He did not argue. He did not beg. He only turned to the twins. His eyes rested on them with a sadness too deep for boys their age to understand. "Take care of each other," he said quietly. Then he walked out through the same gate he had opened for them every day. The twins stood frozen. Later that evening, as the mansion sank into uneasy silence, Jalen and Jordan passed near the back corridor and heard raised voices from the kitchen. It was Mama Agnes. "You have wronged that man for too many years," she said. Vanessa answered in a low, furious tone. "Be careful, Agnes." "No," Mama Agnes replied. "You be careful. Buried truth does not stay buried forever." The twins looked at each other in shock. Too many years. Jordan swallowed hard. What history was their mother hiding with the Gateman? The next morning, the silence inside Hart Mansion felt heavier than before. Elijah was gone. For the first time in years, the gate looked empty in a way that felt wrong. No calm greeting, no gentle reminder, no quiet smile waiting for Jalen and Jordan after school. Even the air around the front entrance seemed colder. The twins noticed it immediately. At breakfast, Vanessa sat at the long table in a crisp cream blouse, reading messages on her phone as if nothing had changed. Her face was calm again, controlled, untouched. Bianca was not there, but her influence still lingered like perfume after someone leaves a room. Jalen pushed food around his plate. Jordan barely touched his juice. Vanessa looked up once. "Eat properly. You both have school." Neither boy answered right away. Jordan finally spoke. "Where did Elijah go?" Vanessa's eyes returned to her phone. "He no longer works here." "That is not what I asked," Jordan said quietly. Vanessa's gaze lifted again, sharper this time. "Mind your tone." Jalen stepped in before things could get worse. "We just want to know if he is all right." "That matter is finished," Vanessa said. "You are children. You do not need to concern yourselves with staff issues." The words landed hard. Staff issues. The twins exchanged a glance. They said nothing else, but both of them knew the same thing now. This was not over. Later that afternoon, after returning from school, the boys did not go near the front gate. They did not wander outside. They did not do anything reckless. Instead, they went where they knew truth sometimes lived in quiet corners. They went to the kitchen. Mama Agnes stood near the large wooden counter, kneading dough with strong, steady hands. The kitchen smelled of warm bread and herbs, but even that comfort could not soften the tension in the room when she saw their faces. "You two should be changing out of your uniforms," she said gently. "We need to ask you something first," Jalen replied. Mama Agnes paused. Jordan stepped closer. "Please." She looked from one twin to the other and slowly wiped her hands on her apron. "What is it?" Jalen took a breath. "Why did Elijah know so much about us?" Jordan added, "And why were you scared yesterday when Mother fired him?" Mama Agnes looked toward the kitchen door as if checking whether anyone might hear. "Some truths are heavy," she said at last. "Too heavy for boys." Jordan frowned. "But we are the ones living inside them." That line hit her. For a moment, Mama Agnes said nothing. Then she exhaled slowly and nodded. "Come with me." She led them down a quiet side corridor, past the pantry and laundry room, to an old storage room few people used anymore. The door creaked when she opened it. Dust floated in the thin light from a small high window. Inside were old trunks, covered chairs, box decorations, and forgotten pieces of a life the mansion no longer displayed. Mama Agnes crossed the room and knelt beside a large wooden trunk with brass corners. She took a key from the chain around her neck. Jalen's heart began to pound. "What is in there?" he asked. "History," Mama Agnes said. The trunk opened with a soft groan. Inside were albums, folded letters, and framed photographs wrapped in cloth. Not the polished public pictures that stood around Hart Mansion now, but older ones, simpler ones, realer ones. Mama Agnes lifted one stack carefully and handed it to the boys. Jordan stared first. "These are old," he whispered. They flipped through photo after photo. A younger Vanessa stood in places they had never seen before. Small rooms, narrow streets, modest gatherings. And then Jalen froze. There, in one cracked and slightly faded photograph, was Vanessa. But not the Vanessa they knew. This Vanessa was smiling openly, almost laughing. Her hair was loose, her eyes were bright, and standing beside her, close enough to mean something, was Elijah. Jordan's mouth fell open. "That's him," he said. "That's really him." Before Mama Agnes could answer, the storage room door swung open. Bianca stood in the doorway. Her eyes moved from the trunk to the photo in Jalen's hand, and her face changed at once. "Close that box," she said sharply. The twins turned toward her, and for the first time, they saw something in Bianca's expression that looked very much like fear. Why was Bianca afraid of the past? That evening, Bianca's sharp voice in the storage room still rang in the twins' ears. Close that box. She had said it too quickly, too forcefully, as if the old trunk held something more dangerous than dusty photographs. After that, Mama Agnes had quietly taken the picture from Jalen's hand and told the boys it was time to leave. Bianca stood by the door the entire time, watching every movement with narrowed eyes. She said nothing more, but her silence felt colder than anger. Now, night had fallen over Hart Mansion. The long hallways were quiet. The chandeliers glowed softly above polished floors. Somewhere in another wing, Vanessa was still working behind closed doors. But in the back kitchen, under the warm yellow light above the wooden table, Mama Agnes finally decided to speak. Jalen and Jordan sat across from her, still in fresh house clothes, their faces full of questions. Mama Agnes folded her hands. "What I am about to tell you," she said softly, "began long before this mansion, long before your mother became Vanessa Hart." The boys leaned forward. "There was a time," Mama Agnes continued, "when your mother had nothing but courage, beauty, and ambition. She was not living in a grand house then. She was living in a small rented place with peeling walls and dreams bigger than her pocket." Jordan blinked. It was hard to imagine. "And Elijah?" Jalen asked. Mama Agnes's expression softened. "Elijah was there. He was a young man then, hard-working, quiet, honest. He loved your mother deeply." The kitchen went still. "She loved him too?" Jordan asked. Mama Agnes nodded. "Very much." For a moment neither boy spoke. Then Mama Agnes went on. "They were not rich, but they were happy in the way poor people sometimes are when love still feels stronger than fear. Elijah worked any job he could find. Deliveries, repairs, driving, loading goods. He did not complain. He only wanted to provide for the family he was building." Jalen swallowed. "And that family was us?" "Yes," Mama Agnes said. "When you two were born, Elijah changed completely. He adored you both. He carried you, rocked you, stayed awake with you, and worked himself tired just to keep food in the house." Jordan looked down at the table. It was hard to match that image with the quiet man who had stood at the gate. "But your mother," Mama Agnes continued carefully, "always wanted more. Not because she did not love you, she did. But she feared poverty. She feared struggle. She feared that love alone would not give her sons the life she believed they deserved." That was when everything changed. Mama Agnes explained how Vanessa's intelligence and determination caught the attention of the powerful Hart family, one of the richest families in the city. During a difficult period in one of their businesses, Vanessa was invited into their world. She proved herself quickly. She was brilliant, sharp, and impossible to ignore. And then another man entered the picture. His name was Adrian Hart. He was the heir to the Hart name, a polished and respected man whose approval opened doors everywhere. He admired Vanessa's mind. He trusted her judgment. He saw in her a woman who could help rebuild the family empire. But not everyone welcomed the life Vanessa had before wealth. Mama Agnes's face darkened. There were two people who saw Elijah as a problem from the start, she said. Bianca Vale and her father, Victor Vale. The twins listened carefully. Bianca believed your mother's rise would be cleaner without a poor man beside her. Victor believed family power should stay useful, polished, and easy to control. Elijah was none of those things. He was honest. He had roots in the truth, and truth often disturbs people who are building lies. Jalen's fingers tightened around the edge of the table. Then came the blow that changed everything. One day, Mama Agnes said, her voice lower now, a theft accusation was suddenly placed on Elijah. Money had gone missing, papers were signed, witnesses spoke, and before he could defend himself properly, he was arrested. Jordan drew in a sharp breath. Jalen stared. Arrested? Mama Agnes nodded slowly. Yes, disgraced, humiliated, taken away while your mother stood in a storm of pressure, fear, and temptation. The kitchen seemed smaller now. Did Mother know he was innocent? Jordan asked. Mama Agnes hesitated. She should have fought harder for him, she said at last. That answer said enough. Vanessa had been given a choice, and she had made one. Under pressure, seduced by status, and desperate to secure a future for her sons, Vanessa stepped into the Hart world, and she left Elijah behind. Jordan's voice was barely above a whisper. So, Elijah lost everything, and Mother became Vanessa Hart. Mama Agnes looked at both boys with sorrow in her eyes. Yes. Jalen's face hardened. Then he asked the question neither of them could hold back anymore. Was Elijah framed so Mother could become a Hart? The next morning, the question from the kitchen still hung over the twins like a storm cloud. Was Elijah framed so Mother could become a Hart? Neither Jalen nor Jordan had slept well. The answer Mama Agnes gave them the night before had not been a full answer at all. It had been worse. It had been silence in the shape of truth. By sunrise, both boys were already awake. Hart Mansion stirred around them as it always did. Footsteps moved through the halls. Curtains were drawn open. Breakfast was prepared. But for Jalen and Jordan, nothing felt normal anymore. Every polished surface in that house suddenly seemed to reflect a lie. They did not go to Vanessa first. They went straight back to the kitchen. Mama Agnes was there, pouring tea into a cup, her face already tired, as if she had expected them. Jordan spoke first. His voice was soft, but steady. Please do not hide it from us again. Jalen looked at her directly. We need the truth. Mama Agnes set the cup down slowly. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she pulled out 2 chairs and nodded for them to sit. The twins obeyed. Mama Agnes took a breath that sounded heavy with years. Yes, she said quietly. Elijah is your father. The words landed between them like thunder. Neither boy moved at first. Jordan blinked as if he needed to hear it again. Jalen stared at the table, his face frozen. Then Jordan whispered, Our father. Mama Agnes nodded. Your biological father. The kitchen fell silent. Jalen's throat tightened. Suddenly, 100 small memories began to make sense at once. The way Elijah looked at them. The way he remembered things no ordinary worker should know. The way his voice softened around them, even when he said almost nothing. Jordan shook his head slowly. So, all this time, he was right there? Yes, Mama Agnes said. Right there. Jalen looked up sharply. Then why was he a gateman? Why did nobody tell us? Mama Agnes folded her hands. Because after your mother entered the Hart family, the truth became dangerous. The city was allowed to believe that you both fully belonged to the Hart legacy. People accepted the name. They accepted the image. And with time, the lie became part of the walls of this house. Jordan swallowed hard. What about Adrian Hart? Mama Agnes's face softened at the mention of the name. Adrian Hart was the man the world knew as your mother's husband. He later gave you his name and his protection. He understood what that name could do for your future. But the truth about Elijah was buried under that protection. The twins sat still, trying to carry something too large for boys their age to carry easily. Mama Agnes continued. Years passed. Your mother became richer, more powerful, more respected, but guilt never truly left her. So later, quietly, secretly, she arranged for Elijah to return to this estate. Jordan's eyes widened. As the gateman? Yes, Mama Agnes said. Jalen stared in disbelief. She brought our own father back here and made him stand at the gate. Mama Agnes closed her eyes briefly. She told herself it was better than losing him completely. She told herself this way, he could at least stay near you. Jordan's voice trembled. Did he agree to that? He did, Mama Agnes said sadly. But only after she made him promise never to tell you the truth. Why? Jalen asked. Because scandal could destroy the image she had built, Mama Agnes answered. And because your mother was still afraid of losing power, afraid of losing control, afraid of what the truth would cost. Jordan looked down at his hands. So he watched us every day, he whispered, and we never knew. Mama Agnes reached across the table and gently covered his hand with hers. He loved you both in silence, she said. That does not erase the wrong, but it is the truth. Jalen leaned back, his jaw tight. This is not fair. No, Mama Agnes said. It is not. For a while, none of them spoke. Then Jordan lifted his head. We need to ask Mother ourselves. Jalen turned to him. Tonight. Mama Agnes studied both boys carefully. They were not shouting. They were not acting wildly. They were hurt, confused, and trying to understand. Children still, but children standing at the door of a truth that had shaped their entire lives. At least let me be there, Mama Agnes said. You should not face this alone. Jalen nodded at once. Yes. Jordan's voice was quiet now, but firm. Tonight we ask her everything. And upstairs, behind closed doors, Vanessa Hart was already preparing for another day of power, not knowing that by evening, the two sons she had tried to protect with silence were coming to ask the one question she could no longer escape. Would Vanessa deny it again, or finally confess? That same evening, the air inside Hart Mansion felt tight and heavy. The boys had said very little after leaving the kitchen. They went through the rest of the afternoon quietly, carrying a truth that had changed everything. By the time the sun began to set behind the tall gates, Jalen and Jordan were no longer just confused. They were ready for answers. Mama Agnes walked with them to Vanessa's private sitting room, a beautiful space filled with pale furniture, framed art, and polished silence. It was the kind of room made for important conversations, but tonight it felt like a room built for judgment. Vanessa Hart stood near the fireplace, still dressed in a fitted evening outfit after a long day of meetings. Her phone was in one hand. Her face was composed, but the moment she saw Mama Agnes enter with the twins, her eyes sharpened. What is this? Vanessa asked. Jordan spoke first. We need to talk to you. Vanessa glanced at Mama Agnes. Alone. No, Jalen said, more firmly than usual. She stays. For a brief second, surprise crossed Vanessa's face. Her sons were respectful boys. They did not often challenge her directly. Vanessa set her phone down. Very well, speak. Jordan took a breath. Is Elijah our father? The room went still. Even the ticking of the clock on the far wall and now sounded loud. Vanessa's expression did not change at once, but something in her eyes did. A flicker, a crack. Then it was gone. You are children, she said coolly. There are things you do not understand. That is not an answer, Jalen said. Vanessa straightened. Adult matters are complicated. Jordan's voice shook, but he did not stop. Then explain them to us. Vanessa looked from one twin to the other. Where did this come from? Jalen answered immediately. From the truth. Mama Agnes said nothing, but her presence in the room made denial harder. Vanessa turned away for a moment and walked toward the window. Her reflection stared back at her in the darkening glass. When she spoke again, her voice was lower. You do not know what this world demands, she said. You do not know what it costs to protect a family. Jalen's eyes burned. Did protecting us mean making our father stand at the gate? That hit her. Vanessa turned sharply. Jordan stepped forward, his face pale with hurt. Why did he stay there if he is our father? No answer came. The silence stretched. Then slowly, Vanessa's control began to slip. Her shoulders dropped, her face tightened. For the first time, she did not look like the untouchable woman the city admired. She looked like someone standing in front of a door she had held shut for years. Yes, she said at last. The twins stared at her. Vanessa swallowed hard. Yes, Elijah is your father. Jordan's eyes filled instantly. Jalen stood frozen, as if his body had stopped moving, but his thoughts had not. Vanessa continued, each word sounding heavier than the one before it. I was young. I was afraid. I saw what poverty was doing to us, and I wanted more for you both. I wanted safety. I wanted power. I wanted a future no one could take from my sons. And you left him? Jalen asked. Vanessa closed her eyes briefly. I chose the heart name. I chose position. I told myself it was for you. Jordan whispered, You let us call him the Gateman. That line broke something in her face. Yes, she said, her voice cracking now. And I have regretted it for years. She admitted that Adrian Hart, the late man the world knew as her husband, had known more than most people realized. He had agreed to keep the truth hidden, believing the family's public image had to remain intact. Mama Agnes looked at Vanessa with quiet pain. Image is a cruel god. Before Vanessa could answer, hurried footsteps sounded in the hallway. The door opened, and Conrad Reese stepped inside. Conrad was the Hart family lawyer, a careful, polished man who only appeared in person when matters were serious. Tonight his face was tense. Madam, he said, I'm sorry to interrupt, but this cannot wait. Vanessa turned, unsettled. What is it? Conrad hesitated for 1 second, then spoke. Elijah collapsed after leaving the estate. He has been admitted to a private clinic. Jordan gasped. Jalen took a step forward. What? The doctors say he was already unwell, Conrad said. Severe exhaustion. Vanessa's face went pale. For 1 long second, nobody moved. Then Vanessa grabbed her bag. We're going. The twins looked at her. Now? Jordan asked. Yes, Vanessa said. Mama Agnes stepped closer to the boys. I'm coming too. Vanessa nodded once. There was no pride in her now, no cold distance, only urgency. As they hurried out of the room together, one question pounded through the twins' hearts, louder than anything else. When they reached the clinic, would Elijah speak the truth to them himself? Later that night, the drive to the clinic felt longer than it should have. No one spoke much inside the car. The city lights flashed across the windows, then disappeared, then returned again. Jalen sat stiffly beside Jordan in the back seat, both boys silent in a way children should never have to be. Mama Agnes sat near them, calm and steady, while Vanessa stared ahead, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. For once, the powerful Vanessa Hart looked like a woman who was afraid of arriving. When they reached the private clinic, a nurse led them through a quiet hallway with pale walls and soft lights. The smell of medicine hung in the air. The place was peaceful, but the peace felt fragile. Waiting near Elijah's room was Dr. Amara Cole, the physician overseeing his care. She was a calm, serious woman in her 40s, dressed in a clean white coat, with the steady voice of someone used to speaking clearly in emotional moments. "Mrs. Hart," Dr. Amara said, "he is stable." Vanessa released a breath she had been holding. "But he is severely exhausted," the doctor continued. "His blood pressure was high, and he has clearly been neglecting his health for some time. He needs rest, proper treatment, and less strain." Jalen looked up. "Can we see him?" Dr. Amara's expression softened as she looked at the twins. "Yes, but keep it gentle. He is awake, though still weak." Vanessa nodded. So did Mama Agnes. The door opened quietly. Inside, Elijah lay against white pillows, looking weaker than the boys had ever seen him. His face had lost color. His eyes were tired. Yet the moment he saw Jalen and Jordan, something warm and painful moved across his face. The twins stopped near the bed. For 1 second, neither of them knew what to say. Then Jordan stepped forward first. "Is it true?" he asked softly. Elijah already knew what he meant. He glanced once at Vanessa, then at Mama Agnes, then back at the boys. Slowly, he nodded. "Yes," he said, "it is true." Jalen's throat tightened. "You're really our father?" A long silence followed. Then Elijah answered in the gentlest voice. "Yes, I am." Jordan's eyes filled, but he stayed still. "Why didn't you tell us?" Elijah looked at both boys with quiet sorrow. "Because being near you mattered more to me than claiming a title. I thought silence was the price I had to pay to remain in your lives." Jalen frowned, hurt flashing across his face. "At the gate?" Elijah swallowed. "At the gate, in the driveway, in small moments. It was not enough. I know that, but it was what I had." Vanessa stepped closer, her voice low. "Elijah, I am sorry." He turned to look at her. Years sat between them in that one glance. "I know you are sorry," he said, "but regret is not the same as repair." Those words landed hard. Vanessa lowered her eyes. Before the silence could deepen, Dr. Amara entered again, holding a large brown envelope. "He asked me to keep this safe," she said, handing it to Vanessa, "in case the truth ever came out." Vanessa stared at the envelope, then slowly opened it. Inside were several neatly folded letters, each marked with one of the twins' names in Elijah's handwriting. There was also one official document, aged but protected in a clear sleeve. Conrad Reese, who had just arrived at the clinic, stepped closer to look. Vanessa unfolded the paper first. At the bottom was the signature of Adrian Hart. Jalen looked from the paper to his mother. "What is it?" Vanessa read in silence, and the color drained from her face. Conrad took the document from her and scanned it quickly. His expression changed at once. "It's a private statement," he said carefully. "Adrian wrote this before his death." "What does it say?" Mama Agnes asked. Conrad looked up. "It says Adrian believed the theft accusation against Elijah was false," he said, "and he suspected that someone inside the family arranged it." The room went still. Jordan's voice came out in a whisper. "Who?" Conrad turned the page. There, repeated more than once in Adrian's note, was one name: Bianca Vale. Vanessa's hand flew to her mouth. Jalen stared in disbelief. "Bianca!" Mama Agnes closed her eyes as if an old fear had finally stepped into daylight. Elijah looked away, pain passing across his face. It was the pain of a man who had waited too long for truth and still found no peace in it. Jordan looked at his mother. Did Bianca destroy everything? Vanessa did not answer at once, because suddenly the question was no longer only about the past. It was about what Bianca might still be planning now. Did Bianca destroy Vanessa's first family, so she could control the second one too? The following morning, the silence that returned to Hart Mansion was not the silence of control. It was the silence of a secret finally breaking open. Vanessa had barely slept. Adrian Hart's statement had stayed in her hands, long after everyone else in the clinic room had gone quiet. By dawn, the words still burned in her mind. The accusation was false. Someone inside the family arranged it. Bianca Vale. Now she stood in her study, still dressed in yesterday's anger, waiting. A few seconds later, the door opened, and Conrad Reese, the Hart family lawyer, stepped inside. Conrad was a polished, careful man who had spent years protecting the legal interests of the Hart name. He rarely looked shaken. This morning, he did. Vanessa did not ask him to sit. "You knew," she said. Conrad held her gaze. "Not everything." Vanessa slammed Adrian's statement onto the desk. "Then tell me the part you did know," Conrad exhaled slowly. Adrian had doubts for years. He planned to correct old private records. He wanted to protect the boy's future before anything could explode publicly. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "And why didn't he?" "Because every time he moved closer," Conrad said, pressure came from inside the family. "Bianca," Vanessa said. Conrad hesitated. That hesitation was answer enough. At the same time, down the east hallway, Bianca was already moving. She walked through the mansion with calm elegance, but her pace was quicker than usual. She stopped 2 house staff members near the archive room and lowered her voice. "No one enters my late uncle's file room today," she said. "No one touches any old documents. Is that clear?" The staff nodded nervously. Bianca smiled, but it was the smile of someone tightening her grip. An hour later, another car arrived at the estate. Out stepped Victor Vale, Bianca's father. He was an older man with the kind of presence that did not need loudness to feel dangerous. He carried himself like someone who had influenced powerful people for a very long time. When Vanessa saw him enter the house and Bianca walk straight to his side, something inside her turned cold. So it was not just Bianca. It had been deeper all along. In the kitchen, Mama Agnes suddenly looked up from the counter, her face tense. "The ledger," she whispered. Jordan, who was sitting nearby with Jalen while waiting for news, looked at her. "What ledger?" Mama Agnes wiped her hands quickly. "Years ago, after Elijah was accused, I remember seeing an internal complaint file and a household ledger signed around the same time. I thought it was buried or destroyed. But if Bianca is clearing old records, then she remembers it too." Jalen stood. "Then it must matter." "It does," Mama Agnes said. "Very much." Within minutes, she led Vanessa and Conrad to an older locked cabinet near the rear office corridor, a place no one had opened in years. Dust clung to the handles. Vanessa herself unlocked it. Inside were stacked files, old household records, and at the very bottom, a leather ledger. Conrad opened it carefully. His face changed almost at once. "What is it?" Vanessa asked. He turned the book toward her and pointed. There, beside a transaction tied to the period of Elijah's accusation, was an approval mark carrying Vanessa's authorization code, but the handwriting was wrong. Vanessa stared at it. "I did not sign this." Conrad nodded grimly. "Your signature was copied." That one sentence hit harder than she expected. Not only had Elijah been framed, someone had used Vanessa's own authority to help bury him. By late afternoon, Elijah was brought back from the clinic, not to the gate, not to the security post, but into the main house itself. Dr. Amara had approved the move on the condition that he rest and avoid stress. A guest suite near the garden wing was prepared for him. When Jalen and Jordan saw him enter through the main doors for the first time, neither boy ran wildly. They simply stood closer than before, as if trying to adjust to a truth that still felt too big. Elijah noticed, and for the first time, he was not entering Hart Mansion as staff. He was entering as a man whose place had to be faced. That evening, Vanessa returned to her study with the copied signature, Adrian's statement, and Mama Agnes's recovered records spread across the desk. The pieces had finally formed a cruel pattern. Bianca and Victor had not only destroyed Elijah, they had manipulated Vanessa's rise, tied her future to a lie, and buried the one truth that could weaken their control over the Hart name. And now, with the Hart Legacy Gala only days away, Vanessa saw the final shape of their plan. If the secret broke on Bianca's terms, Vanessa would fall, the twins' standing would be questioned, and the company board could be pushed into panic. Bianca had never just wanted silence, she had wanted power. Vanessa lifted her head slowly, fury and clarity finally meeting in her eyes. The Hart Legacy Gala was no longer just a celebration. It was a battlefield. 3 days after the truth began tearing through Hart Mansion, the night of the Hart Legacy Gala finally arrived. The estate glowed like a palace. Golden lights lined the driveway. Long tables shimmered beneath white floral arrangements. Expensive cars rolled through the gates one after another, carrying board members, investors, social figures, and old Hart family allies. Waiters moved carefully across polished floors. Music floated through the halls. To the city, it looked like a night of beauty, wealth, and triumph. But beneath that polished surface, war was waiting. Vanessa Hart stood at the top of the main staircase, dressed in a deep silver gown that matched the cold fire in her eyes. She looked every bit the powerful woman the city had always feared. But tonight, something had changed. She was no longer standing there to protect a lie. Across the ballroom, Bianca Vale moved among the guests like perfume in the air, soft, elegant, and impossible to ignore. She smiled at one investor, then leaned toward a board member, letting poisoned words travel where she knew they would grow. "Such a beautiful family," she murmured, though beauty often hides instability. A woman beside her frowned. "Instability?" Bianca gave a light sigh. In a house like this, one never knows what truths are holding the walls up. That was how she worked, never too direct, never too loud, just enough to start fear moving. At the edge of the room, Victor Vale watched with quiet satisfaction. Beside him stood Conrad Reese, holding a sealed folder against his chest, his expression unreadable. Then the ballroom doors opened again. The room shifted. At first, guests expected another politician, another shareholder, another person who mattered in the usual way, but instead, a man stepped inside, wearing a dark, formal suit, his posture calm, though his face still carried signs of recent weakness. It was Elijah. No gate uniform, no security post, no lowered position. He was walking into the gala beside Vanessa Hart. Conversation stopped. Music seemed to fade under the weight of the silence. Bianca's smile held for 1 second too long. She had expected Vanessa to hide. She had expected panic. She had expected shame. Instead, Vanessa had brought the buried truth into the center of the room. Jalen and Jordan stood with Mama Agnes near the side of the ballroom, dressed neatly for the occasion. They stayed where they were supposed to be, close to trusted adults, watching everything unfold with wide, serious eyes. Vanessa reached the center of the room and lifted a hand. "I would like everyone's attention," she said. Her voice was calm, clear, absolute. The last whispers died away. "For years," Vanessa began, "this house has stood as a symbol of power, order, and legacy. But tonight I will not speak to you about image. I will speak to you about truth." Bianca took one step forward. "Vanessa, this is hardly the time for theatrics." Vanessa turned to face her. "No, this is the time for endings." The room tightened. Vanessa continued. "Many years ago, a man was falsely accused, disgraced, and removed from the life that should have been his. I allowed silence, pride, and fear to lead me. That man is Elijah." Every eye turned toward him. Vanessa's voice lowered, but it did not break. "I wronged him. I allowed his place to be buried, and I let my sons grow up not knowing the truth." A wave of shock moved through the guests. Bianca laughed once, sharp and unbelieving. "You are destroying yourself." Conrad stepped forward then. "No," he said, "she is correcting the record." He opened the folder in his hands and withdrew an official document. "This is a sealed statement from the late Adrian Hart," Conrad announced. "It confirms that the accusation against Elijah was believed false, and it protects the legal standing of the twins within the Hart legacy." Bianca's face changed. Victor moved toward her at once. "Say nothing," he muttered, but it was too late. Mama Agnes came forward next with the recovered ledger and complaint file. Conrad laid out the evidence clearly. Copied authorization, manipulated records, coordinated pressure from inside the family. Bianca and Victor linked to the old plot that framed Elijah and steered Vanessa's life for their own advantage. Gasps rippled through the hall. Bianca's elegant mask finally cracked. "You weak fool!" she spat at Vanessa. "I built the road you were too frightened to walk." "No," Vanessa said. "You built a lie and called it survival." Security moved quietly to the edges of the ballroom as board members began demanding answers. Victor tried to speak, but the room had already turned against him. And then, in front of the entire city's gaze, Vanessa turned to Elijah. Her voice softened. "I cannot erase what I did, but I will not let this house deny you again." She faced the guests. "Elijah is not a servant of this family's story," she said. "He is part of it." No one spoke, because the truth, once named aloud, had a power no gossip could defeat. Later, after the guests had gone and the mansion had fallen into a stunned, exhausted quiet, the next afternoon brought something far smaller and far more important. The school car pulled into the driveway. Jalen and Jordan stepped out. Vanessa stood waiting near the entrance. Beside her stood Elijah, no longer at the gate, no longer hidden. The twins looked at him, then Jordan smiled first. "Dad." Jalen followed, his voice steady and sure. "Dad." Elijah's eyes filled at once, and as Vanessa stood beside them, hearing that word spoken openly at last, she understood the full cost of what she had almost lost forever. What a story this was. At the heart of it, this story reminds us of something very simple, but very powerful. Money can build a beautiful house, but it cannot build truth, love, or peace. Vanessa had wealth, status, and control, but none of that could cover the pain caused by one buried secret. In the end, the truth still found its way to the surface. That is one of the biggest lessons here. No matter how long a lie is protected, one day it will demand an answer. Another lesson is that pride can cost us the people who matter most. Vanessa thought she was securing a better future, but in doing so, she almost destroyed her own family completely. Elijah, on the other hand, showed quiet sacrifice. He stayed close to his sons, even when life pushed him to the edge. and the twins reminded us that children often see what adults try hardest to hide. Their simple questions opened the door to a truth everyone else had buried. For me personally, this story is painful, but it is also healing. I think the most touching part was not the public exposure at the gala. It was that final moment when the boys called Elijah Dad, openly for the first time. After all the silence, all the pride, and all the years that were stolen, that small word carried more power than the whole mansion, the whole gala, and the whole heart name. To me, that was the true victory. And I will say this honestly as the narrator. My heart went out to Elijah the most. He suffered quietly, loved deeply, and carried a father's pain in silence for years. But I also found Vanessa interesting because she was not a simple villain. She was a broken, proud woman who made terrible choices and then had to face the damage they caused. That made the story feel real. Now I want to hear from you. Who was your favorite character in this story? Was it Elijah, the quiet father with a wounded heart? Was it Vanessa, the woman who had to face her past? Was it Mama Agnes who finally opened the door to the truth? Or did one of the twins touch you the most? Drop your answer in the comments. I really want to know who stayed in your heart after this story. And if this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. This is Mr. Hope, and I will see you in the next story.